Hello everyone, I'm Christina of CSLdesigns and today I'm going to show you how to make this Celtic knot Kumihimo bracelet. And this is the one that I've made. So what we have is that Celtic knot right there in the middle, made with two separate braids of Kumihimo. And then going on to the ends there, the sides of the bracelet, we're using also two kind of individual braids to then kind of frame in those beads that we're adding in along the way. And what I'm actually using is two different braid structures. So I'm using one braid structure for the braids we're making the knot with. And then we move on to using a different braid structure where we then add in the beads on the side. And then I just finished off the ends using these ribbon ends so we get a nice professional finish. And we can attach whatever kind of clasp and findings that we want to. So this is what mine looks like. And then I'm just going to show you what it can look like on. So you have that Celtic knot right there in the middle on the wrist, and then you have your beads going all the way around the sides. So if you want to learn how to make this bracelet here, then stay tuned. So these are then the materials that we're going to need. Here what I have first of all is my Kumihimo disc, and I'm using the square one because it's flat braids that we're making. And then the cord that I'm using is this 1mm satin cord in this nice purple colour, but you can choose whichever kind of cord you want to, and also thickness. It will just give you different results. And I'm then using these 6mm round silver metal spacer beads to add to the piece. Now what you're going to make sure, regardless what beads you're using, is that two lengths of the cord that you're using will go through the holes in one of these beads. And then to finish it off, I'm using these ribbon ends here, which I'm then going to attach my lobster claw clasp and extender chain to using the jump rings. So let's get it all together and let's get started. And then the lengths of cord that we're going to need is 8 lengths of about 1 meter each. And then what I've done is I put all the ends together so they're even, and I've gone in about 30 centimeters from those ends and just tied a knot here to hold all the cords together. So I have these shorter ends, and then I'm going to start working with these longer ends there. So I then took all the cords and put them onto my Kumihimo disc, and I put that knot down through the hole in the center, and I have the short ends there coming out on the bottom of the disc. So I then distributed the rest of them like this, so I have two next to each other in the middle of the top one and two opposite. And then I have two on either side in the middle as well. So this is how the setup is for the first braid. And then to start making the braid, I'm going to start from the top here. So I'm going to take the top right one and release that from the disc, and then bring that over to the left side and place it into the slot below the two cords on the left side here. Then I'm going to take the left one over towards the right side of the disc and put it into the slot below the two that are already there. Then we're going to do the same but on the bottom side of the disc. So I'm going to take the right one first of all, bring that over to the left and bring it into the slot above the other one's placed. Then I'm going to take the left one towards the right and again in the slot just above. So we now have 4 on each side. Then we need to take the cords in the middle on the sides of the disc. So I'm just going to start on one side here. I'm going to take out of the two middle ones the top one, then bring that down towards the bottom of the disc and place it in to the left of those two middle slots. And then I'm going to take the bottom one and bring it to the top and just put it straight opposite, so they're pretty much in a straight line like that. Then I'm going to do the same on the other side of the disc. So I take the top one of the two middle ones, bring that down, place it into the right one of those two middle ones on the bottom. Then I take the bottom one and bring it up, and again straight opposite. So we now have the two pairs there right opposite each other again. Then what we have left is, you can see we have a big gap there on either side. All I'm going to do is take one cord at a time and move them one slot closer to each other. So what we end up with is all the cords in the original setup. So you can see we have pairs opposite each other on all sides of the disc. So that was one full round. So what we're going to do is start another round. So I'm just going to show you again. I take the top right one, bring it to the bottom left, then I take the top left there and bring it to the bottom right on the sides of the disc, and then on the bottom side of the disc I take the right one, bring it to the left side in the top slot, and then the left one goes to the right side in the top slot. And then we need to move the middle ones on the side. So the top one out of those two middle ones we bring down, stay on this left side of the disc, and then the bottom one goes up right opposite, and then the top one out of the two middle on the right side comes down, place it into the slot next to the previous one, and the bottom one of the two goes up. And then again, all we have to do is close up the gaps on the side, so we end up with the cords back in the original position. And then that's another round. So all you got to keep doing now is keep braiding, so we end up with a braid going across the middle of the cords, and we have lengths on either end. So I've now kept braiding, and then what I have is a braid coming out towards the back of the disc, and it looks a little something like this. So what I've ended up with is about 5 inches of braid. Now it's not 100% what we're going to need, but I'd rather have a bit too long than too short, because we can always undo a bit on the ends once we make the knot. So what we've got to do now is take this off the disc. So I'm just going to keep hold of the end of the braid there, the open end. Then take the cords off the disc, tie a knot just to hold it together and keep it from unraveling. And then we have to repeat this whole thing again. So we have 2 pretty equal braids next to each other that we can then make the knot with. So I now made both braids here, and this is what they look like. Now they don't have to be the exact same length, because like I mentioned, we're going to be undoing a little bit on the ends once we make the knot. So also what you'll find is the 2 sides of the braid are not 100% the same. They are slightly different from each other, so you can really choose whichever side you prefer. But what I do recommend is that you make sure to keep the same side pointing in the same direction. So I'm going to be using this side on both of them. So I'm going to make sure that they face upwards, and then this to me is the back of the braids. So what we're going to do now is use these 2 braids to make the knot with. So I'm going to start with one braid here to begin with, and what we need to do is put a bit of a curve and loop into the middle of it. So I'm going to the middle of the braid and starting to bring the 2 ends together, and I'm making sure that it stays lying flat as well. So then I'm going to cross the 2 ends of the braid over each other, over or under each other. So we have a little loop like this. Now it doesn't have to be perfect right now, because we just need to get it in place. Then I'm going to just maneuver it around to the side like this. It's up to you how you best work with it. But then I'm going to bring the other braid in. And again, I'm working from the middle of the braid here. And what we need to do is first of all place this in the right position. We need to get it in between the 2 ends there. So this one, the top one of mine, is crossing underneath and the other one is crossing over. So I need to make sure that the end of the braid that's going towards the top here is going underneath the one, the other end there, and the other one that's pointing downwards is going over the end that's going towards the bottom. So there we go, that's going to lay, and then we're going to end up making the loop here. So I'm going to bring the 2 ends further around. You can see this I'm making now is going to be the same as this here, the first loop that we made on the other braid, but we just need to make sure we cross the ends of the braid over and under in the right way, because obviously we need it to intertwine and stay in the knot. So that means that this end, it's going to cross over or under this side here, but you need to look at where this is crossing over or under previously. So this one needs to go under, because last time this went under, so this now needs to go over. So that means we need to bring the new one under, just like that. And I'm bringing it under all the way under the loop there. And then the other one I'm going to bring around, and this one obviously then needs to go opposite. So that means I need to bring it over this first loop, but we obviously need to intertwine it. So I'm just going to keep the first end of the braid under there, try and hold it in place. Then we need to bring this end of the braid through the first loop that we made, including the tails. Just kind of ignore the tails for now. Obviously we're just focusing on the braids, the braided section of the cord. And then I need to bring the braid underneath the one that's already going under the loop, to then come back up through the same loop but on the other side of that braid. So just maneuver your braids around and then pull it all the way through again. So then you can see that makes them intertwine like that. And that now is that crossover section. It's the same thing that we made in the initial loop that we made, but on the opposite side. So this is basically the knot. So now what I just want to do is just tighten this up until I basically have the tightness in the knot that I want. And it's nice and fastened together. It's not going to be too loose and move around too much. But obviously we want it to stay in place when the piece is finished and we want to wear it. So just tighten up this knot until you're happy with it. So when you're then happy with how your knot looks, then what we need to do is obviously make the sides as well. And as you can see, I have excess braid there coming out on all the ends. So that's what I meant. We're not going to use up the whole braids that we made initially, but I'd rather have too much, because then what we're going to do now is adjust this so we can kind of get our cords in position to make the sides of the bracelet as well. So basically we just want to focus on one side at a time. We don't need to do them all at the same time. So what we're going to do is I'm going to be using some hair grips for this. I find them really handy. And what I basically want to do is decide where I want these braids to end. And it's going to be just basically after the top part of that loop there. So what I want to do first of all is actually bring the braids out to the side. So straight out, lay them how I want them to lay to continue. So I can then see where I need to put this hair grip. Something a bit like that on one of them. And then also on the other one in the same place. So they're nice and even. Just bring them in over, because these hair grips are then meant to kind of hold on to the end of the braid there, so obviously they don't unravel while we continue making the rest. Because what we're going to do now is go back to the Kumihimo disc, we're going to reattach this and actually continue making a braid. It's going to be a different one, but also we want it to be as seamless as possible. So I'm keeping these hair grips there, and then what we want to do is actually undo these knots. Like I said, just work on the one end at a time, because if you do the other end at the same time, you're going to likely maybe push a hair grip off by accident, and then obviously the braids will start unraveling and you have to redo the whole thing. So just work on one end at a time. So I'm using these two first. Like I said, undo the knots here. Then once you've done that, you can then unravel the braid right down to this hair grip without worrying about the rest of it coming undone. Obviously be careful to not kind of push these hair grips off by accident. And then once you've done that, we can then reattach all these cords to the disc. So now that I undid both braids, then what I've done is attached my cords onto my Kumihimo disc again. And I brought all of these ends up through the hole in the center of the disc, and I've also brought those grips towards the top so they're laying on top of the disc. And then I have the knot there that we made coming out from the hole towards the back of the disc. And I'm just using that knot to kind of hold on to there. So now what we need to do is distribute all of these cords onto the slots on the disc. So first of all, you can just separate the ends from the two different ends of the braid there out from each other, because all of the cords that are coming out from the end of the braid that's towards the right, I'm going to leave and attach to the right side of the disc, and then all of these ones here from the left, I'm going to attach on the left side. So what we need to do is, first of all, you're going to probably find your cords that are coming out from the end of the braid in a natural way. So I want to try and stick with that, not cross them over and under each other too much if I can help it. So I have my first one here. I'm going to bring this down, and what we also need to make sure to do is place them into the slots so we have enough slots left for all the lengths of cord, because what we have is 8 lengths coming out from each end of the braid. So I'm going to come down and put this into a slot on the bottom of the disc from the outside, working my way in. Put it in there, so I make sure that I have 4 slots available on this side of the disc until I then reach the midpoint. The next one that I run into, I'm going to bring to the top, just in the opposite slot to the one I just placed. And then the next one to the next one in on the bottom side. So I'm basically just alternating here, kind of taking the next cord available each time, and then kind of alternating from the top and the bottom and filling in the slots. So it's going to end up having 4 cords on the bottom and 4 on the top towards the left side of the disc, but from the middle. So just separate them out the best you can. I'm going to bring that one actually. If you need to kind of swap any around, you can do that. Bring that to the bottom, and then the last one out of these ones, just separate it from all the others there. Finish that by putting that in the top one. So we now have the 8 lengths from this end of the braid placed on the disc. And then you just want to do the same on the other side. You can work from the middle out or from the ends into the middle. That's completely up to you, really. But you just want to, like I said, basically repeat now on this side. So we're going to end up with 8 lengths of cord on the top side of the disc in the middle, and then also 8 opposite on the bottom side there. So just do that with the rest of them. So now I attached all the cords here to the disc. We need to start braiding again, but this is going to be a different braid structure than the one we used for the braids we made the knot with. So what we're going to do is we're going to start on the top side of the disc again. I'm going to start from the middle, but this time we need to start with the left one out of the 2 middle cords, and we need to bring that to the left side. So we're bringing the left cord there towards the left, so staying on the same side of the disc, and just placing it into the slot that's straight out to the side. And then I'm going to take the right one out of the 2 middle ones and bring it to the right. So they are basically now crossing over all of the other cords, going towards the top and the bottom there in the middle. Then we need to move all the cords on the top and the bottom. So it doesn't matter what side you start with, we're going to kind of work on individual sides here, but just start with the one you feel comfortable with. I'm going to start on the left side of the disc. Imagine you have kind of a line down through the center there, and it's kind of separated into 2 halves there. So I'm going to take the left one of the 2 middle ones on the bottom there and bring that towards the top into the slot that's straight opposite. So that's the left one out of the 2 middle ones that are empty. Then I'm going to move towards the left, 1 slot at a time. So grab the very next cord, bring that down into the now empty slot on the bottom, and then the next one out towards the side of the disc, bring that up, and I'm constantly putting the next cord into the empty slot on the opposite side that was freed up from the previous movement. You can see here I'm just moving my way out further towards the side of the disc, using each cord along the way on the top and the bottom. And the last one, furthest one out towards the side on the bottom here, just bring that up and place it into the empty slot on the top that we just freed up from the previous movement. So that's one side. We now got to repeat the exact same thing on the other side. So it's all the same, just mirrored image obviously because it's the opposite side. So I'll take the right one out of the 2 middle ones and bring that up into the empty slot on the top, and then again just move 1 cord out every time and bring it to the empty slot on the opposite side that was just freed up. Working our way towards now the right side of the disc, 1 cord at a time. Until we reach the last one here from the bottom, then bring that up. So that's now all the cords on the top and the bottom of the disc moved. What we need to do now is then move the ones on the side back into the original setup. So I'm just going to take one at a time, doesn't matter which one you start with. And what I like to do when I'm moving these side ones is I kind of grab hold of the cord with my hand, and then I push against all the cords that we crossed over there and kind of tighten that whole area up before I then bring this down into the last empty slot on the bottom there. So you can see this side is now the same setup as before we started this round. I just need to do the same thing on the other side. Release the cord on the side of the disc and then just push against all those cords in the middle while I kind of pull a little bit at the cord that we're moving before bringing it down. And I just do that because it tightens up the braids in here and makes it a lot neater. So there we go, that's basically 1 full round. So we just need to do a couple rounds like this before we start adding in any beads. So now I've just done a couple of rounds of what I just showed you, and basically what we're doing is continuing the 2 braids separately but at the same time, but obviously now we're just making a different braid structure than the one we used for the knot. So what we need to do now is add the bead, because I reached the point where I feel like the first bead is going to fit in nicely. So you just want to, like I said, make a couple of rounds until you feel like the bead will sit nice in between, but it won't be too close, but also not too far away from the kind of top part of that loop in the knot. So you just want to kind of judge that. So what we're going to do is use the same braid structure, but I just want to add a bead in while making it. So previously what we were doing making the separate braids, I'm taking the left one out of the two middle, bringing to the left side, and the right one goes to the right side. Now what I'm going to do is release the two middle cords there from the top at the same time, and then I'm going to get to the end of both of the cords, so like that. Then I'm going to get my bead, and we need to put both lengths of cord through the bead here, but going in opposite directions. So just put the cord from the right through the bead like this, and then I'm going to put the other cord through the bead in the same hole, obviously, but in the opposite direction. And then once we pull these, you can see we have the bead sitting like this with both cords going through. And what you'll find is that the cords are now naturally going out to the side, but technically they're now crossing over each other in the middle of that bead instead of going out to the side without crossing over each other. So that's how we add a bead. And then I just want to pull them tight, so the bead is going to end up sitting closely between the two braids. We're going to pull it tight again just in case it gets a little bit loose while we're making the movements here. So the bead sits right down the middle, and otherwise what we're going to be doing is the exact same thing as before. So you just want to start on one side, take the one from the bottom there, bring it up, and then use one cord at a time, working your way out towards the side. So you can see this is the exact same as before. The only difference with this round now is that we added in that bead by crossing the cords from the middle inside of it, instead of just bringing them out to each their own side. Do the same on the other side of the disc. Using each cord here all the way out to the side. So we used all of them. And then this is where we just want to kind of retighten, because obviously we have the cords on the side again, they need to be brought back into the structure. So I just take one at a time, and this is where you definitely want to make sure to pull the length while pushing against the other cords there, because you want to make sure that the braids we're making on the side are nice and tight against the sides of the beads that we're going to be adding. So make sure of that, bring it down, same on the other side, tighten this one up until the bead is nice and tight in there in the middle, and then that's now a bead added in. So then what we got to do is obviously get to the point we need to add the next bead in, because I can't do that straight away. I can't add another bead in this next round here because the beads will be too close together and they just wouldn't really fit and kind of buckle up on each other. So what we now need to do is go back to what we're doing in the rounds just before adding the beads in, or the bead there, is out of the two middle ones on the top, I take the left one, bring it out to the left side, so staying on the same side, and the right one goes out to the right side. So we're kind of separating them again now. I'm going to be making the two individual braids on the side, and otherwise here it's just the same. And make sure to still tighten up the braids when you bring in the cords from the side back in to the structure, and then get to the point where you need to add the next bead. So to get to the point where I'm adding the next bead, I made 2 rounds after the last one. So that's not counting the round where I added the bead, it's the 2 rounds after that. And now I'm going to add another bead because it's a nice spacing now. So again, same principle, I'm going to release the top 2 cords from the middle that would normally bring up to the sides, each their own side, but instead of that, I'm just going to bring them through the bead, going in opposite directions. Bring it through there, and then as you pull at them, it's going to end up sitting right there in the middle, and then you can look and see if you're happy with how close this sits to the previous bead, because you want to make sure you don't place them too close to each other because they'll just buckle up and they won't sit nice and even. But obviously you don't want them too far apart either because there'll be too much space in between them and that won't look that even either. So there we go, just got to finish this round where I've added the bead in the exact same way as the other ones, by moving all the cords one at a time from the top and the bottom to the opposite side. Just one side of the disc at a time, like that, and the other one the exact same. Moving away toward the side of the disc, and then the cords on the sides here, again make sure to tighten them by pulling the cord while pushing the cords that are crossing over on the top and the bottom of the disc, so the bead and the braids there on the side get nice and tight. So there we go, now we have the second bead added in, and you can start to see the two beads there and how it's going to end up forming. So that's now a continuation basically of the braids that we used to make the knot with. And we're going to have a nice decoration with the beads on the side as well. So you just want to keep going like this, and obviously keep going until you reach the length on this side that you need for the size you need your bracelet to be. So that means you can just measure along the way, and remember that's just one side of it, so one half. And then what we're going to do is you can then finish it off, take it off the disc, and obviously we need to flip it around and then do the exact same thing that I showed you there on this other side as well, so we can get the full length for the bracelet. So now I made both sides of the bracelet, and as you can see we have that knot there in the middle, and then we have those individual braids kind of framing those beads on either side of it. And then what I did on the ends of the braids here is I just continued the individual braids for a little bit without adding in any beads, just so we have enough braid to be able to finish off the ends there. So here on the end we just have the two kind of separate braids after that last bead we added, and I'm then going to use those to attach my ribbon end onto, and they're going to fit perfectly inside of it there, obviously using glue. Now I already have a tutorial where I show how to use these, so how you attach them with glue, and it's just the exact same way, we just have two kind of individual ones, but you just make sure they both fit inside there. So I'm just going to make sure to leave a link down in the description box below to that tutorial if you're not familiar with how to do that. Otherwise all that's really left to do is finish off both ends in this same way using the ribbon ends, and then you can obviously attach your clasp. So I then finished both of the ends off here and also attached my clasp. So I got my Lotto Claw clasp on this end and then just the extender chain on the other end, and then this is the final bracelet. So you have that knot in the middle and then just the individual braids, but also adding in those beads along the way just to give it a little bit of interest. And then both sides look very much the same, but like I did mention that the braids there in the middle specifically, there is a back and a front to that, other sides are different, so it's up to you which one you prefer pointing forward, and obviously that determines how you wear it. So that's what it looks like. So I have loads of other Kumihimo tutorials on my channel, so please feel free to check them out, but otherwise I really hope you enjoyed this one, and thank you very much for watching.